Women who chose to be a side chick to a taken man. Why did you do it? How did it end? Oh, and I can answer. To clarify, I am not trying to justify what I did and fully acknowledge it was wrong. I'm just trying to explain what factors led to the situation. I just started a new job and after a few months, ended up completely falling from a married boss. I knew it was wrong and tried to keep my distance, but I had a bunch of business trips together which resulted in a lot of one-on-one time. Mentally, I was in a really dark place. I had a string of dates that didn't go anywhere where I felt rejected and used, gained 40 pounds, and my self-esteem plummeted. Meanwhile, I had this super attractive, successful guy at work lifting me up, telling me I'm smart, beautiful, and that any guy who isn't into me is an idiot. Anytime I was with him, I would finally feel alive again and felt like we had just had magnetic chemistry. He also admitted to feeling the same way towards me. We tried not to do anything, but after a year of tension, we finally ended up fooling around. I knew he was married. I knew it was wrong. I never met the wife, but thought she must be a much better person than I was. My colleagues met her, and I knew she was beautiful, fit, and seemed really kind. I was at such a low point in my life that I would take the scraps just to be with him. It was a tumultuous relationship, and I tried to end it many times, but because we literally worked together in a tiny office and I still had intense feelings for him, I would start back up. I tried dating other people to take my mind off things, but couldn't because I was so in love with him. I felt trapped and would frequently cry in the office bathroom knowing I needed to get out somehow. I ended up breaking it off with him, resigning and taking a $70,000 pay cut just to get myself out of the situation ASAP. Then lockdown hit and the new companies scaled back their operations, and because I was a new employee, I was laid off. I then spent the next year in a super deep depression, but eventually managed to get myself out of it. So I honestly didn't set out to have a relationship with a married man. I just kind of fell into it over time and made a series of poor decisions. The wife ended up finding out after I'd already resigned, and I know she's the main victim here. And I feel terrible that I hurt someone innocent. I have since landed back on my feet, got a new job, lost all the weight I gained, and I'm feeling far more confident in myself. Obviously, I stay far away from married men. If the situation had happened now instead of at such a low point in my life, I would like to think I would make better decisions. I guess I'm writing all this in response to the comments stating that these women are always heartless witches who want to win over a married man. I mean, sure, they can be the case, but there are also situations which are far more nuanced. This is why you never dip your pen in company ink. Story 2. I didn't know for 2 years. When I confronted him about making plans on Facebook to move in with another chick and accused him of having another woman, he told me that technically I was the other woman, but she was willing to let me move in with him. We broke up and he moved in with her a few months later. A year after we broke up, he called me, complaining that she wasn't financially responsible and wasn't able to run a house as well as me. He asked me to move to Florida with him. I laughed at him and said he should have thought about that before telling me I was the other woman. Story 3. I have a long-term friend who only seeks out these types of relationships. On the surface level, you'd never guess it. She's a VP at a large national insurance company. She's highly intelligent, motivated, and very attractive. She has no interest in getting married, having long-term relationships, or having children, and has a type. Older men, not excessively older, that are established and would have more to lose than she would if they chose to pursue a full-time relationship with her. She expects discreetness, and if she feels in the slightest that the other person involved is starting to slack or is catching feelings, it's off. She's been doing this for almost 20 years and has never put in a compromising situation. It's absolutely nothing to be praised, but it's a pretty incredible feat. Story 4. Not a woman, but I was a side piece to a man who swore up and down that he was straight. Until he had a drop of alcohol, that was. Then he couldn't keep his hands off me. Kept reassuring himself that he's doing this as a favor to me, and that I must really want this. His girlfriend was a really nice girl too. We had several classes in school together, and I'd occasionally walk her home. She had moved away by the time the guy in question and I started fooling around, and they were maintaining a long-distance relationship. Why'd I do it? Mostly selfish indulgence. Aside from losing my V card years before, I'd never really been intimate with anyone in a meaningful way. I was lonely, touch-starved, and the option was right there. Of course, I was going to give in to it. In my head, I was cold, and for a brief moment there was warmth. I lied to myself for a time, because she had made a comment about me and him kissing being hot, so I thought she'd be okay with it. If it and more became a semi-regular thing, she was not. In truth, I just didn't really care what she thought or felt and cared more about myself. Selfish? Yeah, I guess. But I'm not particularly sorry about that part of it. I'm more sorry about allowing myself to be used just for a bit of skin contact. Anyway, after a while, things stopped. They split up, Our lives went on, and as far as I know, none of us even think about the other. And that's that. Lol. Story 5. Not me, but one of my friends who is still actively in her situation. She was a waitress at a high-end restaurant, and he travels with the NFL. Not an athlete. He was married with 3 kids, 9 to 16, and his wife was a stay-at-home mom. He wooed her with all these fancy trips and started paying for her Botox and nails and crap. They started sleeping together about 2 years ago and thought he didn't have plans on leaving his wife. My friend's ex, who's a psycho-narcissist but pretends to have ethics, somehow found out. Managed to somehow get a hold of his wife and spilled all the beans. My friend is now currently living with him in a 1-bedroom apartment on the other side of the country. She won the man, but is no longer benefiting from anything else. His salary was like $14,000 a month, but after paying his wife's mortgage, child support, and spousal support, he's only bringing in about $4,000 to the table now. No surprise, his kids absolutely despise my friend, and also, no surprise, the fancy trips are no longer a thing. Story 6. I have an acquaintance who swears by cheating and claims it prolonged her marriage. She eventually divorced. She now sleeps with a few men, some married or in relationships, but is looking to settle and claims those lovers are not good enough. I'm not sure if she's just deflecting or really thinks that. She really does feel a hell of a lot better about herself. Claims to be a feminist, but has zero qualms about stealing men. She says everything is fine as long as no one finds out. It really bugged me, and a lot of people seem to know and are fine with it. I told her I don't subscribe to lying to people. You can try an open relationship or just not have a relationship altogether, but skip the cheating. It's amazing how quickly feminism becomes selective when it comes to other women's happiness. Story 7. We'd been on and off friends with benefits for basically a decade ever since we were kids, whenever we both happened to not be in relationships at the same time. So we were very used to meeting up, having a really great time together, then going back to whatever our lives were already. At some point, our usual thing happened when I was single and lonely, but well, he had a LTR girlfriend. I guess on my end, nothing was really out of the ordinary, and it was just something I was used to doing with that person when I didn't have someone. Going through the motions, I guess. Not really thinking at all about the girlfriend I hadn't met. But I felt bad later when my brain caught up, so it ended because I turned our unspoken rule, which we broke, into a spoken rule and told him we wouldn't be doing that anymore. Story 8. He wasn't technically married, but engaged. I worked with both him and his fiancée. I was single and in a very selfish mindset. I became fast friends with him and caught feelings, but was never planning on acting on them in any way. A different coworker and I were talking one day and said that he had feelings for me too and thought I was attractive. Him and his fiancée were heavily on the rocks because he had just found out that she had cheated years ago at the beginning of their relationship. He figured he'd even the score and sleep with someone else. I was his go-to. I knew it was wrong, but I was entranced by the thrill of the secrecy, and the fact that we all worked together was just so hot. We agreed it would be a one-time fling, and I was fine with that. He then later tells me he wants to again, so it happens a couple more times. We would hang out at bars together and talk, and I start to fall for him, but I knew he would never leave her, so I ended it. They were set to be married a year later, so I gave him a chance to tell her, but he wouldn't, so I did. They ended up getting married anyway. I am not proud of this. It's my biggest regret. Story 9. He came into my life not long after I was mistreated, and he reminded me of my dad. At the beginning, he said he was single, but when I found out it was a lie, he still stuck around. He would tell me that he was going to leave her, but obviously he never did. I was so stuck on him being my safe place that I would distance myself for a while, but as soon as I was in a bad mindset, I would run back to him to feel safe again. It was a vicious cycle, and the pain and heartbreak physically hurt. Eventually, he stopped feeling safe for me because of how inconsistent he was and how he hurt me over and over again emotionally. I eventually realized that he never really cared about me. His girlfriend was very religious and wouldn't sleep with him, but I would. He would send me sexy videos, and anytime I would try to be sweet with him, he would try to make it weird. It'd make me feel dirty and cheap, but I dealt with it. I feel disgusted thinking about it now. I was basically just his toy. I feel like he took advantage of my emotional vulnerability at the time. I'm still responsible for my own actions, for letting him manipulate me and not respecting myself and his girlfriend. I feel guilty every day for what I did to his girlfriend, but the strongest feeling is hate. I despise him. Story 10. I met him my freshman year of high school. He was a senior. He became my closest guy friend, and I eventually lost my V card to him. He was in the Air Force and stationed in a nearby state. I actually met 2 of his girlfriends when he brought them to meet his parents. Every other visit home, he would spend the weekend with me, but told his partner that he was visiting his parents. This went on for almost 3 years, and I ended it when he fooled around with an acquaintance while he was in town and I was too sick to hang out. At the time, he had tricked me into thinking that I was just so desirable that someone would be willing to cheat to be with me. But over 10 years later, I realized that I had massive insecurity issues and was easily manipulated. He served me all the red flags on a silver platter, and I was still devastated when he cheated on me. He had a drinking problem and would push me to do things that I wasn't quite ready for, and the whole time I would tell myself that I was so cool and sexy. I could chalk it up to naivete or blame being inexperienced in relationships, but I think in reality I was getting a kind of attention that I wasn't getting from anyone else. Story 11. Was the side guy. Dated this girl for 4 months and was thinking about being with her long term. We got along so well. I was never invited to her house because she was from Iran, and in her culture, men couldn't come to the woman's house. Not sure if that's even real, but I believed it and didn't think anything of it. One night we went out and she got way too intoxicated. She wanted to drive home but insisted I drive her and I'll just drop her off and leave immediately. As we pulled up to her house, there was a truck in her garage. It didn't register, but she was always having car problems and that threw up suspicion. Then she let me in the garage door to go out the front, and that's when reality hit. She was definitely living with a man. Then I saw the wedding photo. It absolutely crushed me. Violated me in a deep way, and I'm still working on getting over it. Story 12. Self-hatred and that I'm too mentally immature and weak to leave yet. I fell hard 2.5 years ago. I had the impression he was single because he gave me attention and wouldn't sleep just to talk to me and open up. Once he started getting a little more distant, 3 months into our situationship, he told me that he had a partner of over a decade. Funny thing is, I actually didn't believe he had a partner because nobody would tolerate their man talking to a risque cosplayer all day and night. Screw that. However, after looking back, she was probably away on a business trip or they were on a break and maybe he thought he could try his hand at flirting with someone who gave him the attention he needed. Sometimes I like to think we gave each other Stockholm Syndrome. Never left after I confessed my feelings, said I was confused by his bacheloresque behavior, and said I was sorry for devoting my attention to him. He said he was sorry he couldn't give me a relationship. That was the point that made me feel like I couldn't leave because he would not let me go. I even told him to let me go once during an argument. I didn't ask about his wife and don't want to, but someday I'll be ready to leave him high and dry. A lot of the more loving things he does to me bugs me and makes me latch on more. And it's my fault for being unstable, younger than them and far away, that I can't be his main focus 100% of the time. Right after I learned he had a partner and that they were monogamous, I swallowed my pride and told myself I was just a talk every waking moment and share your entire life pseudo-girlfriend and that their love might fizzle out after 13 years together. We're still the closest friends and I'm trying to go the longest I can just to ghost him because I can't break this, but I can disappear. My brain says they won't stay together, and if I brute force this friendship or lose feelings, which happens every 2 to 3 years, I might have a shot at happiness with him. But my soul says they will end hand in hand and that will self-sabotage our entire friendship one day, and that will be that. Then I can move on to someone who is single and who actually loves me. As of now, I'm ignoring his 23 texts. Yes, 23. And will just continue on as far as I can. Story 13. Slept with a married woman for a while. She was a good person. She felt conflicted and isolated in her relationship and guilty about her trust. I enjoyed being able to hold some of those feelings and showing her a glimpse of how being treated well could feel, never pushing her in any direction. I think they eventually broke up and she told him, but I was out of the picture by that point. I don't regret it. I catalyzed growth that needed to happen and I have no obligation or loyalty to the guy. If his wife was fundamentally unhappy with their relationship, I did him a favor by making that clear enough that she could move on. Would have been someone else if not me. Some people are in relationships they shouldn't be in. Some people are lost and hurting and alone in their relationships. They're still humans who crave connection. Yes, ideally, we get a divorce before experimenting, but sometimes that's an irreversible step and we're not sure. We all deserve to explore how to live our best lives. It's sad that people are hurt along the way. Story 14. I did it twice with a married man. The first time I was in college and he was in my Shakespeare class. He was always around and we had to do a play together. We ended up becoming great friends and he confided in me about how lonely his marriage was. Then he started complimenting me. Then we kissed and then we fooled around in my Ranger. I got sick and tired of him telling me how much he liked me but not leaving his wife. The guilt ate me up. Our semester ended and I made a concerted effort to put space between us. The second time, I was married and he was married. I had a relationship for almost a year, on and off. I really wanted to leave my marriage and he said he did too. When I finally ended things with my husband, I wasn't willing to waste my time with a married man. He would call me and I would ask him what he thought he was doing. I was always trying to step over boundaries at work. We worked together. In the end, I had a breakdown and told him not to talk to me anymore. He would still call every few months. When you say never again this time, girl, make sure it's never again. I wasted so much of my heart on men who were draining me and their own wives, not to mention the rest of their family. Story 15. I had a friend who persistently slept with a married man for a year, and I almost ended our friendship over it. It was hard to maintain a close friendship with somebody who I felt was doing something so morally abhorrent. Not because I couldn't forgive her, but because the friendship was hard to maintain since I wouldn't lie to her. So she couldn't really talk to me about her relationship. Because she would say the same things that you were saying here, and I would tell her that it is a classic cheater move to paint the wife as a horrible person. How he can't possibly leave her and he's trapped. Tale as old as time. Eventually, we just spent that year talking about everything except her relationship. I would never bring it up on my own or be nasty to her, but if she would try to say, "Oh, John and I have this problem or that problem," I would just be honest and say, "Well, the basis of that problem is that John is married to somebody else. It isn't going to change, and that would feel weird lying to you. Pretending to help you solve this when we both know what the real root of the problem is." She didn't like that very much. What kind of crappy friend endorses your delusions when they're hurting you and hurting people around you? I've never been the nod and smile friend. It wouldn't sit right in my soul. Best day ever when we should finally stop seeing him. I stayed friends with her because I thought about whether or not I would want all my friends to leave me when I was doing the worst thing I'd ever done, or if I hoped they'd find a way to still love me. I thought of the worst thing I'd ever done. Did I deserve to be abandoned forever? This event challenged me like no other. I had to do a lot of soul-searching. I tried to find a way to support her without agreeing with the lies he told her, and support her without endorsing her actions. I'm not sure if it actually helped in the end, but I didn't think a good friend would reinforce those lies these men tell their affair partners. True friends don't let you stumble face first towards shark-infested waters and say nothing. Story 16. I was hurting and stupid and selfish. If I'm being honest, a little competitive. I thought we fell in love. I never felt anything like what I felt with him. I justified it to myself as us being a better match for each other. I met the girlfriend in social settings sometimes, and she was kind of terrible to him. Not that this justifies our decisions in the slightest, which made me feel like I was saving him. He swore up and down that he didn't have romantic feelings for her and that she was basically his roommate and he would leave as soon as he could. When your self-esteem is low enough, when you hate yourself enough, you feel like scraps are all you deserve. That's how I felt. A weird mix of, I deserve this, I deserve something good for once, and I don't deserve to be truly happy. And then a year passed, and another, and another, and another. 4 years in, and I realized I couldn't beg for scraps anymore. I ended things and started therapy and tried to address what made me such a broken person that I would inflict so much hurt to someone else and to myself. I feel so much shame about my decision to be that selfish. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 17. My ex used to date celebrities when she was younger, and she could because when she went into the room, all eyes were on her more than the celebrity. Never wanted to hear the details, but one time she did let someone slip out. He was talking about some hockey player in the Phoenix Coyotes and said something along the lines of that he had multiple girlfriends, but she had to wait her turn for his attention because it was special anyways that she got his attention. Almost like since he had multiple women that wanted him, he was actually a better catch, and maybe one day it would just be her. But this would also turn her off if no other women wanted him anymore. I guess she was attracted to the challenge of winning him over from other women, like some kind of twisted game of conquest. Story 18. When I was in my early 20s, I met my best friend's ex from our freshman high school and fell fast and hard for him. Turns out he liked me too. I made the mistake of telling him we could never be truly together, but I still loved him. So we were a fling thing for a few months. And one day I got an angry text from my bestie, whom I hadn't talked to in a couple months, that I needed to come get my stuff from her room ASAP. And that's how I found out she apparently wasn't over him like she'd advertised and begged him to date her again. Since he kept my and his relationship under wraps, he had no problem getting back together with her. Long story short, I lost my best friend, all our mutual friends, and him. For a long time, I blamed myself and called myself the other woman. I agreed with my friend's decision to take all my friends away. One thing that kept me going, though, is that no matter how much she hated me and how evil I was, I couldn't stop existing just because she wanted me to. I was still a person who had been hurt, even if I was the one in the wrong. It was a sucky experience, but I learned it's okay to be a bad person, make mistakes, and move past it. I'm also a couple years older. My brain is finally fully developed, and holy cow, it's so nice. No more falling head over heels in love with people I shouldn't. Story 19. When I was 20 or 21, I became involved with a man who was 28 or 29. It was a family friend, and I was always comfortable with him. One thing led to another, and we would sleep together and hang out often, but because he was a family friend, and my boss at the time, and he had a girlfriend, no one could ever know. He had a girlfriend at the time, but no one liked her. It's not an excuse. I don't think he was happy with her either. I ended up developing feelings for someone I worked with and asked him out. When I started to like him more, I was honest and told the family friend that I can't keep doing this and he shouldn't either. I then ended up dating the coworker for 4 years. Not sure what would have happened if I hadn't met who I did. When I was seeing the family friend, it was very unhealthy. My self-worth was in the toilet. I would show up at his house intoxicated. I always had anxiety. I waited for his calls and attention. It was rough. Damn, writing all this now feels like a different person lived this life. Life is wild. Story 20. I fell in love with an incredible man. We connected as online friends over mutual interest. The friendship was fast, near immediate. It was like we clicked almost instantly. As the months went on, our connection deepened and we grew more vulnerable with each other. One day I had the balls to bring it up. What was happening and did I feel it too? I said I did. Each of us expressed feeling a level of comfort and understanding with the other that we had never felt so wholly seen and known before. Not by anyone, ever. Supported, accepted and wanted and welcomed. I felt like we were mirrors of each other, two halves of the same brain. We had our first phone conversation. His voice was perfect. We hadn't even seen each other's faces. It's not like we negotiated an affair, but we didn't hold back either. We chatted every single day for over 2 years. We lived in different states and managed to meet in the middle a handful of times. Those days were magic. During our times together, I felt complete contentment. Could breathe and relax. Being near him was a balm. His presence brought warmth and safety, peace. It was comfort and shelter. We propped each other up through some very difficult crap. I don't know if the details of our home lives matter, but things were bad for us both in that regard. It was all impossible, but we kept it together as long as we could. Time was extremely short for him, and we were both hurting badly over not being together. Plans were few and far between and often canceled. We were both losing, no matter how hard we tried. We were clinging to each other while we drowned. We weren't supposed to find each other, but we did. I want to know him in every lifetime. Hopefully in at least one of them we can be together. Whatever souls are made of, his and mine are the same. My answer for him is always going to be yes. Story 21. 5 years long mistress here. Started as casual intimacy. He's in a don't ask, don't tell, live together relationship with kids. I thought I'd be safe from disappointment and frustration if I had a non-conventional type of attachment. I thought I could love someone and enjoy great intimacy without the obligations or the pitfalls of being his primary partner or living together. I like my freedom and privacy, and it just made sense to try something like that. Plus, I really adored him. What I found out is that men will disappoint you in any way they possibly can. No matter the definition of your role, there's no one more selfish than a man who feels entitled to his use of multiple women. Our fighting became so frequent that it was flat out bad for my health. Story 22. I was in a very ill-fated situationship with his best friend. Instead of being creeped out every time, my situationship's best friend always seemed to be around to comfort me when we were off again. I truly believed this was the only person who saw me. I don't know why. He told my partner about us and would tell me I better never tell this girl. I felt awful about myself for pursuing a relationship that wasn't meant for either one of us. I felt isolated. The best friend was taking advantage of the situation. He was always quick to turn up with drinks and remind me we'd already crossed that line if I tried not to fool around, and I was pathetic. I put myself in a bad situation, felt awful about it, and made it worse. Leaving a lot of details out, but it was very dark. When I just wanted to crawl out of my skin and got so tired of myself and them, but didn't know how to get out of the cycle, I told my mom. First thing she did was get my life together because she definitely didn't raise me to act this way, and then we made a plan to get me on a healthier path. Maybe there are some folks who can handle it, but I'm not one of them. It's taken a lot to arrive at a point where I'm not actively horrified and haunted by it. Not a nice story, but I hope it helps someone. Story 23. I met him when I was 16 and he was 30. I didn't know if he was married at first, and by the time it came up, I was already convinced we were sailing away together to some fairy tale ending. We didn't live in the same city. I would only see him when I went to visit my grandparents and cousins. I had major self-esteem issues, and I felt so mature having someone like him interested in me. It was years before we had intimacy, and I was an adult by then and should have known better. But when I was with him, I was a silly, infatuated little girl again. Didn't know the wife at all. To me, she was his proverbial ball and chain he'd married too young and he couldn't afford to divorce, or so I was told. The intimacy lasted a few months, and then I heard his wife had cancer and found out they actually have 2 younger kids. Rose-colored glasses were off in an instant and reality hit. And that was the end of that. I didn't formally break it off, just totally ghosted him and for years made sure to never run into him, at least alone when I visited family. I still get updates about him, just because he's in a professional contact with some of my cousins on occasion. His wife passed away about 10 to 15 years ago. I feel immense remorse for her and hope she never found out. He remarried someone younger, I think younger than me, and they had a baby last year when he was 56. Story 24. I actually set my friend up with a colleague I knew was married. He's a beautiful, kind, and sweet soul, and he's trapped for now in a very difficult and cruel marriage. He adores his children and couldn't face a life where he didn't see them every day, and he's also controlled financially. If he leaves his wife, he leaves with the clothes on his back and with no assurance his kids would even be safe alone with her. Black and white terms, of course he should leave. But in the more human, gray and blurred sense, he needs to be smart and build the pathway out slowly to protect himself and his kids. I love him to bits, and he and my friend both deserve some goddamn joy for themselves. Is it right? No. Do I think I did the right thing bringing them together? Abso-freaking-lutely. Story 25. We were friends with benefits before he met his official girlfriend. We continued fooling around because I was apparently the best whatever he's ever had, and my low self-esteem pick-me self ate up that kind of praise. And also, like an idiot, I thought I could wait my turn when the official relationship was over. Like a vulture waiting for you to end. Once they eventually broke up and we started appearing together more, people noticed a strange dynamic going on between us. I would drive in to visit from out of town and he'd already be intoxicated at the bars, forgetting that he invited me. The intimacy eventually deteriorated to where I was doing all the work while he flipped through clips. It wasn't hot or loving. It was mechanical. I stopped visiting after that, but we kept the correspondence. Up until I experienced a depression episode and finally stopped talking to him for good. While I was deep in those kinds of thoughts and trying to reach out for support, he kept shifting the conversation to, when are you going to come over for some fooling? I'm kind of glad for that depressive episode. All that dark introspection and the eventual recovery made me realize, holy crap, what am I doing? Story 26. I was in a relationship with a fella who was openly poly. He had another primary partner that he had lived with for 7 years and was his girlfriend for more traditional situations like family gatherings and the like. Why did I do it? Because I was single. It seemed like a good idea. Started as fooling around, moved into dating, but didn't really tell anybody. He's a great guy, but he could be a lot sometimes, and I was quite happy to have a partner sometimes and have my own space sometimes. When it worked really well because I was happy not having a full-time partner. How did it end? We broke up. I grew to love him wholly, but it didn't feel prioritized in return, as expected, and that difference was causing me a lot of anxiety. Combined with the height of the lockdown, it was time to go. Breakup hurt, but wasn't entirely unfounded. All in all, it was a good experience. I learned a lot about myself in terms of my needs for relationships, how to have difficult conversations, and how to handle jealousy. I'm a much more gentle person after being with him, and I'm so grateful for that. Story 27. He told me he was in an open marriage and she also had several partners. I believed him, as we had several shared friends who told me the same thing, that I should have turned around and never interact with him anymore. Sometimes I knew he was lying, but I kind of pushed it to the side. Most dramatic thing I ever experienced. He passed away from cancer, and during his last days, I got the news that he had newborn kids and his wife, who was not involved in any other relationships and thought they were monogamous, of course, didn't know about me. She got pregnant during the time I met him. My reasons for doing the whole polyamorous thing? I had lost my hope for a good, sustaining relationship with a future during that time. I didn't want commitment. I couldn't stand the thought. I just thought he was attractive and wanted to try some stuff out after a very long, horribly ending relationship. Story 28. I started typing out a novella, but I'll say something short here. I was another woman for like 2 very uncomfortable weeks. Thank God he got divorced. It was not fun. I have a friend who was another woman with a guy she just couldn't stay away from and found herself alone with. He wouldn't dump his wife, and eventually she told his wife. They split. They couldn't give my friend what she wanted either, so she dumped him. And I have another friend who has done it a few times without major consequences. All 3 of us would say that it didn't feel like we had a choice at the moment. Sometimes attraction between people is really strong. I usually know how to recognize those situations and stay the hell away. I can't handle much drama in my nervous system. This situation got around my defenses. It was a musical situation, but the choice part of it is to avoid the situations, even though the mutual attraction feels so good. I also want to say that I don't think cheating is necessarily wrong because life is complicated and things come out in all different kinds of ways. I do think that frequently there are expired relationships that need to end and that cheating is a coward's way out. Cowardly, yes, but people are cowardly. And these situations are real. I just don't ever want to be the one breaking up a marriage. It's not my style and it's not something I'm interested in. I do think it's wrong in that it causes a crap ton of pain to a lot of innocent people, especially if there are kids involved. Pain and trauma that last for years and years. That's usually unsexy enough for me to stay away. In my case, the dude had already nuked his own marriage and was going to end it in 2 weeks when they returned to their country. so I didn't feel like I was breaking them up. But it was BS. It still would have caused a lot of people a lot of pain to find out, and it caused me so much anxiety and confusion. I felt like a crazy person. Ugh. Story 29. He's a wealthy and successful athlete, and he DM'd me first. On a Finsta. They all have one. I knew a few other girls who did the same thing, so it took the shame and guilt away. And it's a public secret that most pro athletes cheat, so you're technically not the side chick. I know, dumb reasoning. If the wife basically accepts he does what he wants. Signed an NDA. I also knew I wasn't the only woman he was dealing with, so that also helped. He's generous and helps me out with stuff. Whenever he's in my city for a game, we hang out. Sometimes he flies me out to an away game. I've never been to his city, fly over state. I don't know how long this is going to go on. It's pretty much up to him. Story 30. Coworker. He worked in groundskeeping, but would come in sweating and smelling so good. He would leave me little things he found outside, like flowers and tomatoes he grew himself. It was a slippery slope. He and I were both in relationships. I told my partner immediately when it happened, who told me to end it. I quote-unquote ended it about 6 times before the last time finally took. It's hard to end things with someone you want and who wants you. My partner and I ended up breaking up in the process. Ultimately, it got old not being openly with a person. I don't like doing things in secret. I don't like scanning rooms before holding hands. I got with a friend of mine after me. He and his wife split up but have remained friends. My ex, too, has moved on but continues to grace me with friendship. And he and my friend still see each other. I love them both in a non-romantic way now. That's all more than I deserve. Story 31. I'm a guy who was a side piece to an ex-friend's girlfriend back in high school. My friend randomly started being a schmuck and treating me like crap and mostly stopped talking to me completely unless we were at a party together. One night, his girlfriend hosted a party and a bunch of people just crashed there. In the morning, I was still intoxicated, taking a whiz in the bathroom, and she walked in, got in the bath, and asked me to join. She said they broke up last night, but he still stayed over to avoid going home intoxicated. For some reason, I figured if she wanted it, then it would be okay to have intimacy with her, maybe 20 feet from him. I continued seeing her casually for months whenever we went to parties, and he either didn't know anything or didn't talk about it. Granted, he was barely talking to me anyways. It got real weird the one time we had intimacy sober, and she mentioned that she really wanted a relationship with me. I decided I needed to talk to him about it, but he started off the conversation talking about how she was being distant and acting weird, so they were clearly still dating. I talked to him and he was rightfully mad, but seemed to understand when I told him that if he wasn't randomly being a schmuck to me, then I wouldn't have touched her with a 10-foot pole whether they were broken up or not. Nothing remotely close to that has happened in my adult life, which is nice. Story 32. During that time, I was in a vulnerable state. He knew this, and that's why he targeted me. I was recovering from a past relationship. Although I was conscious of what I was doing way back, I still did it. He planted several manipulations in me. Love bombing, self-pity, gaslighting, the hot and cold technique, you name it, in which he was successful in doing so. I felt like a total miserable mess. I never imagined being a mistress. I know my heart is pure and I can never do such a thing, but I did. I was scared. And after months of deciding to stop it, I treated him like a friend since I felt like he could ruin my reputation and had the power to ruin me. I acted as a friend while he was ranting about his new mistress. A total disrespect, yes. And I tolerated this disrespect as I was scared that he would gossip about everything we had done. I comforted him even though I didn't want to. I felt disgusted during that time. And then one day, his wife messaged me, in which I atoned for what I did. I regretted everything and asked for the wife's forgiveness, in which she did forgive me. I tried to extract information about his new mistress. I told the wife everything I knew about her husband. It's a hell. He knew at the very first place that I wasn't in the right state. That's what motivated him to further hit my vulnerabilities. Story 33. I'm currently seeing a married guy. It's an open marriage. We've been seeing each other for almost 2 years. Initially, I was also in an open relationship, but that ended for unrelated reasons. I chose it because I was looking for something casual. Someone who wouldn't mind being in a secondary relationship. Now that I'm single, I stay because I enjoy our time together and I enjoy the flexibility to see other people. There's a strange comfort in knowing a relationship will never become more than it is right now at this moment. At least for me. I don't want him to leave his wife for me, and he doesn't want to do it. I think that's the secret to being in a situation. Never expect more than the other person is willing to give. Side chicks or side dudes? Why? Was one a few years ago for one occurrence. She said they were in an open relationship and that he got off the videos of her sleeping with dudes. The day after we slept together, he blew up my phone threatening me. She was not in an open relationship. Story 2. Basically, because I have no intrinsic sense of self-worth whatsoever. And the most potent method of feeling good about myself I've ever experienced is to be desired by someone. Combine that with the fact that people who are looking for secret side action are often very eager and not particularly picky, and you have the perfect opportunity for someone like me to stave off the worst symptoms of depression for a while longer. Story 3. I was young. She was an older, married woman at work, and I was stupid. At first, I just thought she liked me, and there was no strings attached fun. Then suddenly she told me she had a husband, and somehow I believed her when she was going to leave her husband to be with me. I wasn't even sure if I wanted that, but went with it because young and stupid. The delusion only lasted a few weeks. He showed up at work to pick her up, and I met him, and I was like, what the heck am I doing to this dude? And that was the end of it. I couldn't handle that crap. I felt terrible for what I'd done. Story 4. Unaware of anyone else in the picture, I thought it was just her and I. Halfway through our time together, I found out there was someone else, but she said it wasn't serious and it was already over. We cooled off for a bit, took a break, then resumed dating. Our relationship eventually ran its course and ended with no hard feelings. Moved across the country. It wasn't until later on I found out that the other guy was in fact her fiancé. I was the side piece. Story 5. I was the side dude. She and I met in high school, despite going to different schools, and ended up going to the same college. We fooled around a little bit of freshman year, but that was it, and we went our separate ways until we, by chance, ended up in the same section of the same class a few years later. We started studying together between classes, and she catched me up on her life. Long story short, her family went nuclear when she started an unorthodox relationship, and the fallout led to financial woes, which led to marriage. Lol, yeah. That's a drastic turn of events, but also a story in its own right, so I'll leave it at that. Anywho, this is about a year after the whole thing went down, and now this old friend of mine is in a pickle, married and living with someone she wasn't in love with. It's a borderline cruel relationship. She has no friends or familial support and no money to divorce and move out. Naturally, I start providing that support, and over the next few months, I help her get on her feet a little bit. Unfortunately, by this time, our relationship has become a little intimate. And by little, I mean a lot. Once we knew it wasn't going to be a one-time fling, we had to talk about what was going on with us and with her spouse. She decides to file for divorce and move in with me as soon as she can. And we continue seeing each other for a couple of months until that plan actually happens. At that point, I'm no longer the side piece. We date for about another 6 months and then, somewhat, peaceably break up. End of story. Story 6. The guy was a snobby rich schmuck who would snarkily look down on people who were poorer than him. Not an intimidating guy by any means. I would consider him more of a bratty nuisance than a bully. Anyways, given that I was raised by a single immigrant mom, he once remarked that life must really suck for me since I had to take out loans to go to school. So when the opportunity came knocking and presented me the chance to repeatedly sleep with his girlfriend over and over while they were living together, I hopped all over it. There was something very rewarding about the fact that I got my mess all over his bedsheet several times. Story 7. I came here to read these comments to see how people could be so cruel and terrible. Not that long ago, I came home from work to a girl in my bed and my boyfriend was just gone. We'd recently had a child together. I left him. He never apologized or acted like he had done anything wrong. He's still with that girl and has bailed on parental responsibilities. I've had so much anger and hate inside me and never been able to grasp how people could do that to other people. I hated her guts and I don't even know her. I'm sure he told that girl we were broken up and I was crazy or so on and so forth. It's nice to get some insight. She probably didn't know. It's so easy to blame the other person instead of the piece of crap who knowingly cheated. Because he would never do that to me. She must have seduced him on purpose. Whatever. Story 8. I had a huge crush on a girl in a club I was looking to join a few years ago. I joined the club through a rigorous audition process and we talked for a long time throughout the vetting process. She mentioned that she often went blues dancing late on Saturday nights, so I ended up going and we eventually hung out more and more once I got into the club. On a club retreat, there were too few beds, so we ended up sharing a bed with 2 other friends of mine and we talked all night. From then on, it was clear something was happening, so we had a long conversation. To her credit, she was very open about her situation. She was in love with a man sentenced to prison. She was also currently dating 3 other guys with permission from her jailbird. Ultimately, I decided to date her because I was convinced I could be a better boyfriend than a convicted person and she would leave him and the other guys. She ended up dating me exclusively within a week, but continued to talk to the guy in prison for the following 9 months we were together. He called her nearly every night and they talked from anywhere between 15 minutes and 2 hours, often with me beside her because we hardly spent a night apart. I loved her so much, but she ended up staying true to her word and decided to stay with him, and we broke up before we left for separate studies abroad. I ended up meeting him a few times when he showed up to the club meetings after we both got back, and I'm not sure anyone in the club knew the full story. She supposedly told him everything that happened while he was in prison, but I'd be surprised about that. They're still together today, and I walk away with the thought that if they don't get married, I'll be pretty angry. Still, I learned where I was willing and unwilling to compromise in a relationship, and ultimately, that compassion is an easy thing to give even when things are hard. While the aftermath hurt like hell, I became stronger for it, and I've had an easier time opening up to the people I've loved since. Story 9. I was young, selfish, and figured their marriage woes were not my problem. They must have had issues or he wouldn't be in the game, right? Besides, it wasn't serious. We were just fooling around. That's how I rationalized it anyway, until I met his wife. She was actually a really sweet person, and if there hadn't been this giant awkward elephant in the room, I might actually have become friends with her. It had been a lark for me, but it was her whole world I was messing with, and she was hurt. I'm pretty sure she knew. That was it for me. I felt like the biggest cockroach in creation. I called it off immediately and later transferred to another office when he seemed less than willing to let it go. Before long, he got caught with yet another woman and they ended up getting divorced anyway. I still regret my part in it. Story 10. In the gay world, relationships can often exist in a more nuanced space. Open relationships are quite common, to the point where if you meet someone on an app like Grindr and they mention being in a relationship, it's often assumed to be an open one. While some individuals certainly use these platforms for dating, many are primarily there to find intimate connections. I met a guy on Grindr and we had a great time together, so we decided to meet up again. This again turned into an ongoing arrangement where we'd text at least once a week to see each other. One time, while at his place, we heard the door open. I hadn't met his partner yet and was under the impression that the partner was always traveling for work. My immediate thought was, well, this could either get really awkward or really interesting. Again, the gay world can be different and a third person can sometimes be welcome. However, the guy I was with started to panic and it was then that I realized something was definitely wrong. I initially thought perhaps a relative had dropped by, like his mother popping in. You probably already know how this actually unfolded, but I was quite naive until he started throwing clothes at me and telling me to slip out the back while he distracted his partner. What's quite surprising is that he had the nerve to reach out afterward. First, to clarify and apologize, which I accepted, but second, to see if I wanted to come over again. I never texted back. The intimate connection was enjoyable, but it wasn't that enjoyable. Goodbye. Story 11. I was a teenager when I met him, and he was my first love. Nearly 10 years older. We just clicked. It's sick, but for me, he was a substance and I was the user. It really came down to being deeply in love with him and being able to walk away when I truly believed love would conquer all. After 4 years, I finally got a divorce, probably married another woman, and our relationship ended badly with my broken heart. He and I are both happily married to other people now and speak briefly maybe once a year, if that. We still have too much tension and unresolved feelings between us to be cordial. Story 12. I was the side chick with a guy in an open relationship. I had been single and painfully low in confidence for so long that I needed some way to get myself back out there without worrying about emotional commitment. That's when I found him on Tinder and saw that he was in an open relationship. I went for it anyway, knowing I'd have a good FWB relationship for a while. And it worked. I never grew feelings for him and made a friend for a good time. Seems like people don't really understand open relationships. Granted, I've only been a part of that one, but I've been open for a long time, and here's what I've learned. An open relationship requires the couple to fully discuss and agree to the terms. For example, this guy told me that the rules for his relationship were no overnights, always use protection, and always tell the other person where they're going with their side dates. Additionally, once one of them decided they needed to cut off their outside relationships, they did with no questions asked. They did. One day we were having fun, and the next, he had to tell me he couldn't see me anymore. I understood because everyone was upfront and agreed to the rules ahead of time. People in open relationships have something that people in exclusive relationships often don't, which is the ability to communicate honestly with each other. They can separate intimacy and love because they still have each other's hearts. Any red flags will come from a lack of honesty or a disrespect for the rules, not because of the open relationship itself. Story 13. This is a really horrible story. Started seeing a guy and right off the bat he lied about women he was sleeping with. Broke things off with him because I didn't want the drama I was getting roped into, unknowingly. But we actually clicked as friends, so we still talked. I then started dating an alcoholic who behaved poorly towards me. The first guy was the only one who believed me and helped me through that difficult period. Foolishly, I then began seeking comfort from my friend, openly shared that they were very active in their dating life. The alcoholic ex found out and lightly stalked me and had a major blow-up and confronted me and my friend. That is how I found out I was the side chick, from my psycho ex. This whole series of events has ended my self-esteem. I feel like garbage. I still keep going back to the friend even though I know I'm the side piece. I've tried dating, but new men scare the crap out of me. I've cried about it. I've tried reasoning the guilty feelings away. I've even thought of ending it all because of it. It's a sad and lonely life, and I've been dealing with this for 7 years. You get to the point where you think so little of yourself and you think this kind of relationship is all you're good enough for. It's a really ugly cycle. Story 14. Married 20 years to my high school sweetheart. Found out he was involved in a 3-year affair with a coworker when my daughter's friend caught them out together. I confronted him. He denied it repeatedly. I believed him. Fast forward 3 months, he finally confessed when he told me it was over between them and he begged for my forgiveness. Several months go by. I catch him sneaking off to meet her and confront him. He begged me not to tell her husband because they were acquaintances and he was cruel. I believed him, but contacted his side chick and asked to meet up. We met. She denied any involvement until confronted with the evidence I had, then claimed no current involvement with him. I did not believe her or him after that, but he kept coming around, saying he loved me and asking for reconciliation. I agreed, just so I could plan the divorce and be the side chick in his relationship with what's-her-face. We divorced 6 months later. She dumped him. I'm happy. Story 15. I was the side dude. She was with him for 11 years. I've known her for 13 years. She was my ex-wife's best friend for a very long time. My ex decided to stop being a friend because she was still associating with me and allowing me to rent in her house. We spent all our free time together while her boyfriend would ignore her and play video games. We had very similar interests. I've been in love with her for some time before we did anything. Physically, she's built like a gosh darn corn star, and is literally the hottest woman I've ever been with. We're extremely compatible. I know I started things off wrong, but there was no right way to get her. There's only one of her. Now that he's gone, we plan on staying together for the rest of our lives. We're head over heels in love. She's incredibly perfect for me, and I'd be gosh darned if I just let an opportunity to be with her pass. I believe in being a good human. I know right from wrong. If participating in an affair damns a person and morally condemns them from the rest of their life, it was still freaking worth it. Story 16. I found myself in the position of being a side chick a few times. In some instances, I was unaware and had been deceived, while in another I was fully conscious of being the number two. For the times I was unknowingly involved, I attributed it to being young and naive, blinded by what I thought was love during my freshman year of college. I painfully ended those relationships shortly after, and in one case, I was even unfairly villainized for it. This led me down a path of self-destructive behavior, and I ended up having a brief fling with a married childhood crush. I knew it was wrong, but I struggled with my inability to stop. The one positive outcome was that I refused to engage in physical intimacy with him, despite his pressure. To snap myself out of my foolishness, I looked at his wife's and child's social media pages. It took only a day. I don't want to jeopardize his child's happiness, so I broke it off. The man then revealed his true colors, blaming me for the affair and even hinting that he had done this many times before without consequence. I now use that memory as a powerful reminder to value myself more and to avoid falling for individuals like him. Even though I sometimes lean towards self-destructive tendencies, I sincerely hope to never go down that path again. Story 17. After my ex-wife and I split up, I went through a pretty difficult period. Having been betrayed myself, my perspective on becoming involved with married individuals shifted significantly. I began to feel that if a married woman chose to be intimate with someone else, the issue was primarily between her and her spouse, within the confines of their marriage. My thinking was that if she was going to be unfaithful, it might as well be with me. I no longer engage in that behavior, though I don't believe my viewpoint was fundamentally changed. Instead, I realized I was frequently connecting with individuals who had questionable character. I decided to stop that pattern, and in doing so, came to understand that most people who would cheat on a spouse are indeed not the kind of people I wanted to be around. These days, I'm quite jaded about relationships and people in general. Story 18. This is a throwaway account because friends know my main, though I suppose it doesn't really matter. I'm currently the side guy, or one of them. We're both in our third year of university and have been involved since the end of her first year. She has an on-again, off-again high school boyfriend whom she's convinced she'll marry and is clearly deeply in love with. However, since she's at college and he isn't, she has needs that he can't fulfill when they're apart. So here I am, a part-time side guy, the unofficial person in her life who provides affection and attention when he's away. I don't need to get into extensive detail, but our physical connection is strong. It's passionate, and we share great chemistry. We're both understanding and good at communicating our desires and boundaries. She's quite open with her boyfriend, even telling him that I'm part of her life at school and that we connect semi-regularly. She's made it very clear she doesn't want a relationship, and while I've respected that, it hasn't stopped me from developing strong feelings for her. Towards the end of her last year, I became quite consumed by these emotions. After the semester ended and we returned to our hometowns, she essentially put me in the back burner and mostly ignored me. That hit me incredibly hard, and much of the summer was quite painful. That, coupled with family drama, really brought me down. I hit a low point. Not rock bottom, but it was one of my lower lows. I just pushed through work as best I could until I managed to pull myself together. Now that we're back at school, we've hung out and connected physically once or twice. I don't know what to do. I hate feeling like I'm wasting my time because I have such strong feelings for her. Though love isn't quite the right word. I enjoy having her around, but I can't say love her, you know? And I want someone who wants me for who I am, not just for physical intimacy. To be honest, I'm the side guy because I have needs too, combined with a desire for affection that I'm not getting elsewhere. So I push through the heartbreak because it's better to feel something than nothing at all. I give her the power because she's mentally stronger and knows more clearly what she wants than I do. Story 19. I have a friends with benefits arrangement. My friend and I are both married to other people. In my situation, my wife lost interest in physical intimacy. We attended counseling, but she wouldn't follow through on recommended exercises. I would have considered divorce, but I genuinely believe her children need me at home. When I'm away on business, chores go undone, and the kids fall behind in their schoolwork. My friend is also married. She made her own choice to engage in this relationship with me. Since our arrangement began, neither of us have been physically intimate with anyone else. Story 20. I'm going to absolutely virtue signal and say that there are some really crappy people in this thread. I'm not responsible for someone else's feelings. Give me a freaking break. If you're knowingly participating in a situation where someone could get seriously hurt, you are a crappy person. Having their trust violated can break a person. They can lash out and hurt other people. They can hurt themselves. They can come for you. And I don't care if they were the one to do it or it's just the other person. You're still a participant in a messed up situation. You don't even have to pull the moral argument to just show a little perspective and understand how your actions create a domino effect. God, I hate people. Crap like this just pushes me over the edge. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 21. Because we are older. Because we have been married to our spouses for over 20 years. Because he is his wife's caregiver. Because she hasn't been capable of having intimacy for over a decade and their lives revolve around her incurable pain and the $5,000 a month in medical expenses. Because he is desperate and exhausted trying to beat down the demons that have hollowed out his spouse and marriage. Because for those few hours, he can be taken care of and take shelter from the howling chaos and crushing responsibility of his full-time life. Me, because my spouse developed ED at 38 and became annoyed with providing intimacy and affection, and suggested that if I stupidly insist on such things, I should go find them elsewhere. He seems relieved and says we're incompatible and always were, that women demand too much, that there's only so much you can learn about a person before you know it all and get bored. Kids are nearly fledged and I'm re-establishing a career. Time to plot a new course. My side dude is my life preserver, and I'm his. Story 22. I was the side piece. I met this woman who managed a bar while I was out on another date. We hit it off and she tried to kick me out and then she showed up to my workplace where I managed to buy a printer. Lasted a while until I got evidence she was cheating. She told me it was her husband and that I was the side piece. I didn't care though. I felt like James friggin' Bond. Even showed up to her husband's little league game he coaches and shook his hand. But my guilt got the best of me and I decided to end it on our way to the Poconos before things got too serious. Story 23. Moved to Australia to work for the summer and got super close with a girl from work. We would hang out just about every day, but I knew she had a boyfriend, so never thought anything more of it. After a couple weeks, things were getting more and more intimate between us and eventually led to sleeping and staying over at her apartment a number of times. I felt awful, but justified it by knowing I never made a move on her, and it was her choice to go through with it. It was weighing heavy on my conscience, so I told her while she was in a relationship we couldn't continue fooling around. She told me that she was planning on breaking up with her boyfriend, which made me feel slightly better. A couple days later, she told me she broke up with him, so we got back to fooling around, only for me to find out at the end of the summer, just before I flew back to Canada, it never actually broke up. The first time being in a situation like this and would definitely never voluntarily go through that again. Story 24. I was the side chick for quite some time. At the beginning, I didn't care about the girlfriend since I wasn't looking for anything serious and all I wanted was an FWB situation. After a while, we were really connected and feelings got in the way, both sides. But he was more aware of not falling than I was. I stayed with him because I felt lonely and his company made me feel better, somehow. Ended up marrying the girlfriend, and boy, that hurt. We're still in contact. He still writes and wants to continue, but I cannot allow myself to think that I only deserve that. Not anymore. Story 25. I had recently ended a 2-year relationship where, during the latter half, I experienced emotional and physical cruelty. He had been unfaithful at least 7 times, so when I finally found the courage to leave, I felt a mix of resentment and self-blame. A close male friend who I knew had a girlfriend began pursuing me constantly once I was single. I'd always harbored a fantasy about him, and being in such a dark place emotionally, I didn't care about his girlfriend at the time. I just wanted some form of vindication. I ended up becoming a side chick for about 2 months. Eventually, I realized that this relationship wasn't as therapeutic as I'd hoped. In fact, I was only causing pain to others. I honestly consider that one of the worst things I've ever done. If I could take it back, I absolutely would. I contributed to ruining a loving 4-year relationship because a completely separate, deeply damaging experience had affected me profoundly. Heartbreak can lead one to rationalize the irrational. Through this, I've learned how utterly destructive infidelity is from both perspectives, and I will never be part of it again. Consequently, I will also never stay in a relationship where cheating occurs again. Story 26. Never cheated on someone, but have cheated with quite a few. First, I don't have any commitments or obligations to some dude I've never met. That violation's on her, not me. Secondly, I'm not really looking for a serious relationship. I have a vasectomy, I can easily pay my bills but don't care about a career and have a general inability to treat life seriously. At my age, that makes for less than great relationship value, but pretty stellar value. I'm just playing to my strengths, not doing anything I consider wrong, and enjoying myself. Story 27. I knew he was seriously with someone else, and I didn't really care. I didn't expect it to escalate as quickly as it did, nor did I assume we were going to start a relationship when we first met. We were in college and started hanging out as friends, and he took me to his family's Thanksgiving, which was a colossal crapstorm, because I couldn't go home for mine, and afterwards we realized there might be feelings. He and his girlfriend were in a long-distance relationship and had been together since high school. I think for him it was a chance for one last hurrah before he married her. For me, I just really liked him. Almost 3 years later, I still feel terribly guilty about it. It was wrong. He and I were both wrong, even though she never found out. Unless he told her after it was over. Story 28. In all honesty, I'm going to sound like I was an unpleasant person, and I was, and perhaps still am to some extent. This all happened years ago when I was struggling heavily with active fixation. I didn't see the harm in my substance use, justifying it by telling myself I never stole from anyone. However, I would engage in intimate acts with people, believing it was unfair to not share substance with someone who had been intimate with me. This provided me the access to substances without even having to ask. They'd pass the stuff, buy me a beer, offer me whatever was available. There was this dealer who was particularly convenient for me. If I was intimate with him, I could pretty much get whatever I wanted at a very low cost. He was married and everyone knew he was unfaithful. I assumed his wife was too. How could she not? So I became intimate with him for the substances. One day she walked in on us with her 2-year-old son. I didn't even know she had children at the time. She gave me a look of disappointment and empathy. This shocked me. I was in her bed with her husband, in front of her child, and through her tears she looked at me as though she understood. If that were me, I might have reacted with extreme anger. That look made me rethink my entire life and ultimately led me to where I am now. During one of my steps in recovery, I've encouraged to apologize and make amends where possible to those you've harmed during your fixations. I tried to reach out to her, but was never able to find her. Still try, sometimes. I want to know if maybe I misread that look or why she chose to simply walk away instead of confronting us. For whatever reason, I'm grateful to her. I walked away filled with shame. There's a difference between guilt and remorse. I feel guilty all the time, but rarely feel remorse. I felt it for the first time that day and I never engaged in that behavior again. I've relapsed and still made mistakes since then, but I'm currently 3 months clean and continuing to work on my recovery. Story 29. I began casually dating a guy who told me he was in an open relationship with a girl who was in a different country. They had apparently decided to have an open arrangement because she was going to be gone for a year or two. After we had spent time together a few times, he started to genuinely like me, so I told him that he needed to inform his girlfriend that he had met someone else. It shouldn't have been a big deal, as they were in an open arrangement and she'd even given him permission to move on. Well, after I told her, I learned some interesting things about her. She was a high school dropout traveling in Thailand for a spiritual journey or whatever, and I started receiving messages like, don't get involved with my boyfriend, okay? I was 20, going on 21, and beyond that kind of behavior. She then started telling me all sorts of unpleasant things she was saying about me, including that I looked like a child. She was, in fact, a child. The relationship endured for about 4 months, with this girl constantly going back and forth between ending things with him and wanting him back as soon as he was with me, and he'd always go back to her. All of his friends and family started treating me and talking to me like the other girl, and I was constantly informed how much cooler his on-again, off-again ex was. I was only ever with him when they were off. He even compared me to her physically. It was one of the most emotionally challenging experiences I've ever been through. At the end of it, he and his friends called me a cruel psychopath simply because I wanted him to admit what he had done. I knew I was naive and that I liked him and that I was vulnerable after coming out of a previous difficult relationship, so I was used as a source of support and attention when he was off with his girlfriend. A whole Facebook status was even made about how I was mentally ill and had mistreated him. I went along with it because I had no self-esteem and desperately wanted him to care about me. Manipulative people often exploit that vulnerability. Story 30. He tried to hide his relationship status in MySpace using codes, even telling me his fiancée was his sister. Being heavily into codes at the time, I essentially dismantled his page after reviewing its HTML. I found numerous "I love you" and "I miss you, baby" comments exchanged between them. I messaged her, asking about their relationship, and she confirmed he was her fiancé. She then wanted to confront me, but I blocked her. He called me, crying, saying he was going to leave her for me. I asked him, "Are you done?" Referring to his crying, he replied, "I'm throwing everything away for you, and this is how you act? You cold-hearted person?" I hung up and moved on with my life. I did have feelings for him, but after all that, I felt I had wasted my time. My sister still laughs at me sometimes because of what I said and how I acted as if he no longer existed after I ended the call. Story 31. I was dating a guy on and off for 2 years. The last time we were dating, more seriously, I received a message from a mutual friend of ours who told me she had also been seeing him. She lived in another state. It turned out that during the off periods when we were broken up, he had traveled to visit and be with her, but had actually been dating both of us at the same time. It made sense when I thought about it because she would often pick a fight with me and then break up completely, almost as if it was timed with something. I assume it was once he had booked his flight to visit her. I apologized to her and then confronted him. He admitted the truth but showed zero remorse. I never got back together with him after that. He was definitely a serial deceiver and all-around unpleasant person. The last time, 10 years ago, he tried to email and contact me a few times over the years, but I'd blocked him from social media and ignored any communication. 2 weeks ago, his wedding photo showed up on my Facebook feed via the profile of a girl we both knew. I couldn't stop laughing because the girl was quite unattractive and I'd always had a crush on him years ago. And she used to give me dirty looks and be really mean to me because I was dating him. I hope they're happy together. Lol. Just kidding, I'm sure he's still a mess. Story 32. I was the one who was cheated on. I had no idea for a long time. After we broke up for real, she would brag to my friends about how she stole him, etc. We live in a small town, so everyone is connected. He ended up getting her pregnant, and that was that. They would still see each other from time to time in secret because I could not let go. Fast forward 15 years, and he had 2 kids with her. Cheated on her a ton, got a bunch of DUIs, etc. She ended up leaving him and moving 5 hours away with his kids. I have been happily married for 10 years and love a beautiful life. It hurt, and I was crushed at the time, but life moves on, and I'm so glad I was forced to. Story 33. I was stupid. I started seeing a guy I worked with, knowing he had a girlfriend, but I didn't give much thought to her or their relationship. One day while he and I were in my living room, my roommate came home from work and, to my surprise, knew him. Didn't recognize her, though, until she reminded him they had met several times and that he was currently dating one of her very good friends from high school. It was just a strange coincidence that he dated someone she went to high school with in New Jersey, considering we were living in Florida at the time. Anyway, that didn't stop us. It just meant we stopped hanging out at my place. Whatever. I kept seeing him, thinking he'd leave his girlfriend for me because I was 21 and naive. Besides, he literally spent more time with me than with her. We were together 5 to 6 times a week in various capacities, whether it was hanging out with work friends or being alone at his apartment. Never knew when he'd actually see his girlfriend because we were almost inseparable. We worked together 40-plus hours a week and hung out after work otherwise. We were always together. I felt more like his girlfriend than his actual girlfriend. And then she dumped him because clearly he was a terrible boyfriend. I never saw her and was being unfaithful, but again, foolish me thought, wow, maybe this is it. Maybe we can be more public about our relationship. Nope. Within a few weeks, he officially started dating someone else from work, and that girl told him he wasn't allowed to hang out with me anymore because she wasn't naive and didn't trust him with me. Their relationship didn't last terribly long either because, honestly, he was a scoundrel. But so was I. I didn't realize how awful I was for willingly being involved with another woman's boyfriend until about a year later in therapy. Now I feel incredibly guilty for letting it go on for about 6 months, but oh well, you live and you learn. Story 34. I was previously a side dude. Initially, I was against the idea of ever being in such a situation. Before anything ever happened, I was introduced to her husband, and I genuinely looked forward to becoming a close friend to both of them. However, he decided to insult both myself and my friends throughout the dinner I paid for. He made fun of my motorcycle and general lifestyle for the entire duration. He rarely spoke, and when he did, never had anything nice to say to anyone. After he finished his food, he grabbed her hand and said, "Let's bounce," leaving all of us, my date, my friends, and their dates at the table without so much as a thank you or goodbye. He did not and does not deserve her. She cooked, cleaned, and is probably the most gentle, loving, caring, and thoughtful person I will ever know, regardless of her motivations for staying with him. That's how I became intimately involved with his life frequently. He worked out of town every so often, so I'd just stay with her until he was on his way back. I'm not sorry, and I'm proud of what I did. If he hadn't been such an unpleasant individual, I wouldn't even have considered the idea. Out of the respect I hold for marriage and the hope that, should I marry, my wife wouldn't be unfaithful, I hold on to the hope that maybe one day she and I will find each other again by some sort of miracle, but even if we don't, I'm so happy I got to hold her hand once upon a time. It was a true love affair. I wonder if she still thinks about me. Likely not. I'll always think about her because the sky is always blue. Story 35. We were coworkers at a bar or club, both in our early 20s. She was a little younger than me. She was new and I was a bar back when we met, but then I became a bartender, which I suppose caught her eye more. Now, I didn't know she had a boyfriend at the time, yet she kept flirting. I was captivated by her innocent smile and quirky nature. Then one day, a coworker told me she had a boyfriend, so I thought, bummer. Okay, move on. However, over the next month or so, she continued to make subtle hints every weekend, and I found myself captivated again. Then all of a sudden, her boyfriend came in, yelling at her and making her cry. I was quite concerned. After closing, she told me he had been emotionally cruel for a while, even before we had met. I can usually read people well, and this behavior continued for another 2 weekends. I decided enough was enough. I asked her if she needed a ride, and she accepted. Halfway to her place, she asked if she could come hang out at my place instead. I agreed, thinking nothing of it. had no intention of what transpired. I just wanted her to not have to deal with her boyfriend. We began a casual arrangement. I was genuinely very fond of her, buying her gifts and always keeping an eye on her at the bar. Our physical connection was quite strong. Eventually, it faded, but she did manage to break up with him, so I'm actually happy for her, and honestly, I don't feel bad about my part in it. Story 36. I wasn't exactly a side chick, but I was regularly involved with a guy who had a girlfriend. They just started dating when we connected, and I don't think he was very serious about her at the time. We'd always had a mutual attraction. Every so often, when we'd be in our group, we'd end up leaving together. Their relationship wasn't really my concern. I was never trying to seduce him, and in fact, I usually went out of my way to ensure we didn't end up next to each other in an isolated spot, but somehow it just happened every time. I didn't force him or compel him to come over. We're both adults. He made a decision to be intimate with another consenting adult, and he made a decision to be unfaithful to his girlfriend. I think he's an unpleasant person for it, but I've been involved with plenty of difficult men. Yes, I did think about what he was doing to her, and yes, I know that my involvement enabled his poor behavior, so I'm indirectly responsible. But I never told her. If you're going to be unfaithful to your partner, it's your responsibility to admit it or clarify the situation. And I know what the typical response is. If you were her, wouldn't you want to know? No, I wouldn't. I've been in her shoes. Different people cope with things in different ways. I don't know what she knows or doesn't want to know. Her boyfriend damaged the relationship. It's not my job to complete the destruction for him. Story 37. I had a thing for married men. It was the easiest, no-strings-attached intimacy possible. No offense, guys, but y'all say you won't catch feelings, but it still happens. I liked knowing that he would sleep with me and go home to his wife like it was no biggie. He eventually grew feelings and was serious about leaving his wife and 3 kids for me. Serious enough to scare me into cutting him off. I stopped sleeping with married men after that. If you've gotten this far, I want to say that I'm no way proud of what I did. I know I did it because of self-esteem issues. I enjoyed the temporary affection. I enjoyed getting something I couldn't have. As well, I was young and dumb. Ugh, I used to gloat about it too. As an adult now, I realize the damages that could have been caused as well as how stupid younger me was. If anyone reading this is in the situation currently, it's not worth it. You are worth more than a side piece. Know your worth. Story 38. I'm struggling with low self-confidence right now, and I honestly don't think anyone would truly want to date me. The sort of unsettling bright side I've discovered is the tender way men who are already in relationships often behave. I've noticed similar mannerisms in people who have recently ended a long-term relationship. Generally, when you're just casually involved with someone, you don't receive the same level of physical affection. Things like gentle thumb strokes, shoulder kisses, holding hands under the covers, or even just consistent kissing. I didn't know at first. I suspected something was off because of his behavior, but I didn't have confirmation. When I've asked about her, he just says she's some girl. I'm being selfish, telling myself she knows and doesn't care, but I know that's not true. He gets late-night phone calls asking where he is, and he'll leave for half an hour to talk on the phone to his buddy. His friends are always uncomfortable and surprised to see me. It hurts a lot, but I don't know how to be alone, and he's always available in the middle of the night when I can't sleep and need company. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.